Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the Marin Municipal Water District Board meeting of October 1st, 2024. Terry, if we could have roll call, please.
Good evening, Director Monty Schmidt.
Here.
Director Jed Smith.
Here.
And President Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
Currently not here are Directors Larry Russell and Matt Sampson.
Okay. And before adopting today's agenda, I believe we have a request for modification of the agenda from our council.
Yes, thank you. President Kush, I would like to ask that the board consider a motion tonight to add a late item pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2B2. The item is a closed session item with legal counsel regarding pending litigation that was just served on the district today after posting of the agenda. The matter would be California Native Plant Society et al. Versus the Marin Municipal Water District, case number CV 0004078 in the Marin County Superior Court. And this would be a late addition to the agenda. It would require a unanimous vote of those present. Typically, it's a 2/3 vote to add a late item, but because we have one missing, we would need a unanimous vote. So that is the request.
And we'll need a motion then.
That's correct.
So moved. Second.
Terry, could we have roll call vote on this item? Larry, do you want a little catch up? Yeah, Molly, if you could repeat that.
The motion is to add a late item to the agenda because we were just.
That's fine.
Okay. Director Schmidt.
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
And President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Terry, do we have any other public comments on today's agenda?
No, we do not.
Okay, then could we have a motion to adopt today's agenda with the modification?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote again, please, Terry.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
And President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll now convene to closed session to discuss anticipated litigation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We are reconvening to open session. Our closed session was adjourned at 6:20 with no actionable items to report. I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comments on items that are not on the agenda.
Yes, we have 5 speakers. The first 3, Phil Sauter, Virginia Sauters Mason, and then Donna Gallagher.
Good evening. These maps with the location of heavy users as well as the location of lawns show, with the exception of the San Geronimo Valley, there's a perfect overlap of lawns and high water use. I've been through the valley talking with other folks, and no one can identify where these lawns are, even though the numbers from the map suggest that we have 50 acres of green lawns. I have passed by lawns that were green in the winter but are brown today and use no summer water. I understand this map data is 8 years old and will be updated this year. In the meantime, I suggest focusing on the 4 areas where we have both high water use and a high number of lawns. When we do that, it becomes clear that our conservation efforts need to be focused on reducing the amount of potable water to irrigate lawns in a few specific areas. We hear it's difficult to convince folks to replace thirsty lawns with less thirsty landscaping, and we're working on new ideas for reaching them. But if we can't change their need for outdoor water, then it becomes clear that we need to either ask all of our customers to pay for new potable water supplies for a few thirsty lawns, or we need to provide a source of non-potable water for these few heavy users of outdoor water. Ben stated recently that a purple pipe system would cost billions of dollars. The best I could do to understand that conclusion was to use Ben's number of $2.2 million per mile of purple pipes and multiply it by 908 miles, which is the length of our current system of potable water pipes. But if we focus on the 4 areas where we really need non-potable water for lawns, it's clear we don't need 908 miles of purple pipes. A fraction of that amount could reach these heavy users. And if we put in a geographically limited network of purple pipes, not only can we support lawns for those few customers, but we can bring in needed sales revenue even in drought years. I think the data we have is leading us to solutions that extend our potable water supply, speed up our potable water conservation goals, reduce the need for outdoor potable water where we can, replace it with non-potable water where we can't, reduce the scope and urgency of other water supply options, and bring in revenue even in times of drought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gallagher, I was gonna go next because I have something to pass out.
I'll pass it out.
Okay, there's 4 members here, right?
Okay, yes.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've been here. I'm really happy to be here. Anyway, my name's Donna Gallagher, and many years ago, before Larry knows me, and then there's a chemistry person here, so I'm going to make a nerd joke. You ready? Okay, so we can laugh. Fluorine is the most reactive halogen on the periodic table, and nobody should really drink any of the halogens. That was for you. You're the chemistry person, right? Okay, good.
You get halitosis.
Yeah, there you go. That's funny. Haha. So anyway, the reason why I'm here is to make sure and report on the fact that in the Ninth Circuit Court, a landmark history-making decision has been made to call fluoride an unreasonable risk with 74 human studies that shows that it lowers the IQ. Now, it's a tough one for you. You've not met me, but I helped get signatures in 2016 to, the wording was that we needed to hold still and quit putting this stuff in until we could prove that it was safe. And that was actually the wording, simple wording of the ballot measure that we were working on. And so what's happened since this ruling on the 24th, all across the United States, Abilene, Texas, just today, a lot of local and state municipalities with water are voluntarily stopping, and how they're doing this without getting sued, because everyone here worries about their attorneys, is the fact that you can pause while we get the studies to see if it's safe. And so the truth is there are no safety studies. There never have been on the fluoride that's being put in many of the, well, hydrofluorosilicic acid, and, you know, there's no safety studies. In fact, there's a zero tolerance for arsenic, lead, and mercury in our water. And this stuff actually comes complete with some of that already. So that zero tolerance gets eliminated by the chemical that you're using. So the reason why he's here, we made you a packet. I just want to make sure you knew about this great news. It's an opportunity for you to do what's right and stop putting this in, because all the years I've worked on this, I've seen a lot. I've met with knocked on doors, met with a lot of pregnant women, and I know some pregnant women that moved from here because most people can't afford a $10,000 reverse osmosis nanofiltration setup in their house. So this is what I'm hoping we could get you to entertain. And I know it's just happened and you got to figure out how you can do it. I'm on your team. I will do whatever I can to help educate. But in the federal ruling, it does say it's a federal ruling. So states that have mandates, I've been an elected official, I know we have one of those, and local places, local entities can just pause until there's actually proof that it's, and there is no proof that it's safe right now, without getting into trouble with your mandate.
Thank
Do you
you.
have any questions for me?
Time's
No?
up.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I know. That's why I told Terry, I go, 3 minutes is a lot of time and not enough time.
Hi there, my name's Ginger Sodders Mason, and I'm a 51-year resident of Marin County. And I'm here because of that court ruling that I, like Donna, was one who tried to pick up those signatures to get it on the ballot, so that, and people just didn't know when they voted. In fact, I probably voted yes when I first moved here to get that fluoride in the water. And I'm so sorry about that, because the IQ of the children is gone when lowered by quite a few IQ points. Not only that, I didn't realize, and when looking back, that there were studies in 56, way back then, that found that pre-malignant bone lesions were found in more kids, boys in particular, who lived in the fluoridated cities. And the fluoridated city was Newburgh. And the non-fluoridated city was Kington in New York. They're in the Hudson Valley. Also, some biochemists who had retired from the government retired from the National Cancer Institute, actually. They presented a paper at the American Society of Biochemical Chemists, and the paper found 5 to 10% increase in total cancer rates in those cities that were fluoridated. Then you also have to look at the aging population of Marin County, of which I'm part of that. And so the hip fractures are highest in the United States of America. I don't know if you knew that. And hip fractures are found more often in cities that are fluoridated. So with that and the fact that children lose IQ, as the Judge Chan in the Ninth Circuit ruled just recently, I really would hope that there would be a moratorium until it was shown to be safe. And that's why in your package, you will find a proposal for a moratorium on putting fluoride in the water system. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next speakers are John Dulcini, Carol Dulcini, and Marilyn Price. Go ahead, Mr. Dulcini.
Thank you. Hello, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is John Dulcini. I thought it would be helpful to provide some feedback regarding the Sewell-Hooley expansion. I have 3 main points tonight. First, it has been pointed out numerous times that the cost estimates are missing key components. My understanding is that the board is aware of these gaps. Therefore, it seems prudent to take a stance that no decisions are made until gaps have been further identified and addressed. Making decisions using an incomplete feasibility study can in no way allow the board to make a properly informed decision. To compare project costs, I believe that the lifespan of the project should be taken into account, along with the associated operating and maintenance costs. Performing this life cycle cost analysis provides a true cradle to grave cost associated with the project. In addition, a net present value style economic analysis should be considered, which accounts for upfront capital costs, annual operation and maintenance costs, interest rates, and inflation over the entire life of the asset. This type of cost analysis is an industry standard, and I believe the net present value analysis would allow you to make a more informed decision. Second, I believe the board should consider if the inundation map accounts for a 100-year storm event or a similar flood design parameter. If not, this would mean that the proposed inundation map is undersized. If it needs to be corrected to consider a large storm event, additional impacts, mitigative measures, and cost should be accounted for. Flooding could potentially encroach onto neighboring properties, Lincoln School and Hicks Valley Road, which could cause the project to become infeasible. Lastly, I believe the reputational, political, and long-term regional impacts should be considered. Saving family farms and ensuring protected land stays in agriculture in perpetuity is a sentiment that I believe the county does support. However, if large-scale projects such as this forcefully take ranches under eminent domain, this could set a negative precedent for future eminent domain attempts on similar protected land. Prime agricultural land in Marin County is a very limited resource, and we should value it as such if we choose to advocate and help ensure future generations can continue to thrive here. I greatly respect board members, the county, and all involved parties for undergoing such an arduous task in performing such a difficult evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carol Dulcini, please. Carol Dulcini.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to speak about also the construction-only cost for the Sewell-Hooley expansion project. As the previous speaker indicated, these costs are problematic. This is because a number of costs which should have been included in the initial estimate done in April were left out. I would like to call the board's attention to just one of these excluded costs. As the board, and we hope the wider Marin community knows, expanding the Sulihuli Reservoir will flood the Hicks Valley community that lives and works on the borders of that reservoir. The decision to continue studying Sulihuli as an expansion possibility was based on the relatively lower $300 million construction-only cost of the project. However, this initial estimate did not include any construction costs that would be necessary to protect the homes and businesses of the Hicks Valley families that border the reservoir. This exclusion is baffling since costs to construct barriers to protect the community bordering on the Nicasio Reservoir were included in the construction-only estimate for the main Nicasio Reservoir project. Those of us who live in Hicks Valley have asked the board why the cost to protect Hicks Valley was not included in the initial Sulihuli cost estimates. On the other hand, if in fact preventing damage to the homes and businesses of Marin's Hicks Valley community was never seen as a necessary cost consideration, then it follows that the baseline project cost for Sulihuli would have to include the cost of purchasing hundreds of acres of private Hicks Valley lands along with the homes and businesses that are targeted for inundation. You can't have it both ways. It has to be one or the other. The cost estimate for a Sulihuli expansion has to include either what it will cost to save Hicks Valley or include what it will cost to destroy it. And yet, neither of these costs is included in the $300 million plus estimate. This exclusion is not transparent planning. This is not defensible decision-making. Initial costs for the expansion should begin at well above $300 million, and the board should be honest and transparent about whether they plan to preserve or destroy Hicks Valley. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Ms. Marilyn Price, please.
Yes, thank you for letting me speak. I noticed that in your last board meeting, the decision was to raise the allowable space for homeowners to install turf from the initial thought of 10% to 20%. I'm just speaking from a personal level, but looking at the state of our world today with an environmental lens, I've read that carbon dioxide is accumulating in our atmosphere faster than ever. And I recently read about a study by the Global Systems Institute at the University of Exeter that found that of all the possible government interventions, mandates are the most effective way to push industries toward what they were called positive tipping points. Thinking about our ongoing global disasters and the IPCC goal of limiting the temperature increase to 1.5 C of pre-industrial levels, the outlook does not look good. With that perspective, I would encourage all policymakers to err on the side of caution and pass tougher regulations as we move forward. Certainly, our turf limit is a small factor, but all our decisions and actions make a difference. Since it takes energy to bring water into our homes, in my view, I would be in favor of tougher regulations by our MMWD as we proceed into the future. I'll close with a well-known saying, think globally and act locally. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments, your inputs. Everything is heard. This isn't a Q&A session, but believe me, everything is heard. And now we'll move on to directors and general managers announcements. We'll follow up with the next agenda item on committee reports. So, Larry, any general announcements or items?
Nope.
Jed?
Yeah, I had the pleasure to join the Marin Stables annual summer fiesta and met dozens of folks in their community and got to check out their barn and a couple dozen horses. And it was nice to see them outside of this boardroom and to start to build personal relationships and semblances of trust. So I really did appreciate that time, and what a spectacular little chunk of land we have over there and how lovely it is that it's used in this way. It reminds me of what we're doing up at West Point Inn. So that was a great opportunity for me to be there. Also wanted to say that I had a lovely time out in San Geronimo Valley with our Phil Sauter here. and some super thoughtful folks on his team talking about water efficiency programs and their thoughts about how we can do better. I encourage more and more participation, Phil, from you and your team. Your analytics and your support is fantastic, and I appreciated that forum, and the folks that you brought were great. Keep it up, and thank you. It was good to be a part of it.
Thanks, Jed. Monty?
Nothing to add.
Great. I just have one item. On September 20th, Ben, Paul Sellier, and I met with community members in the San Geronimo Valley and an aide to Supervisor Dennis Rodoni to evaluate options for a safe routes to school path that could possibly pass through the outskirts of our San Geronimo treatment plant. The consensus at that meeting was that it would be very difficult and expensive to move in that direction. And so attention is now shifted to an adjacent lot owned by PG&E. And we've asked Supervisor Rodoni's office to continue to share progress updates on the safe routes to school options. And with that, on to you, Ben.
One item, as was touched on in public comments, a result from a recent court case regarding fluoridation now requires EPA to evaluate for the first time fluoride under the TSCA rule, Toxic Substance Control Act. That will probably take some time for EPA to gear up and see that through. And in the interim, I expect the district will continue to comply with both California state law as well as a voters initiative that had been passed that both require us to add fluoride.
Thanks, Ben. We'll move on then to board committee reports. We do have 3. I'll start with the Watershed Committee, which met on September 19th.
I'll provide that with Matt Sampson out this evening. So yes, on September 19th, staff presented a recognition plaque honoring the late Roger Roberts, who I still am sad that we don't hear his voice at our meetings, but who over many years was highly engaged in various Marin water community workshops and regularly participated in district watershed committee and board meetings, as well as provided voluntary service on the district community advisory committees. In honor of his memory, the district will be installing a plaque, installing his plaque on a bench along the Azalea Hill Trail. Staff then introduced Renee Cormier with Point Blue Rays from Point Rays, it's actually Point Blue, I think, who presented an update on the patterns of land birds on district watershed lands. It was a great presentation. And staff also presented an update on the progress of current construction work on the phase 1 of the Lagunitas Creek Coho Habitat Enhancement Project. Additionally, staff provided an overview of the 2 proposed contracts, the first being the forestry services to provide labor and equipment through 2027 for vegetation management projects outlined in the Biodiversity, Fire, and Fuels Integrated Plan, the BIFIP. The other with O'Connor Environmental to continue sediment and stream bed monitoring in accordance with the Lagunitas Creek Stewardship Plan, which is required under California State Water Board Order WR 9517. The committee referred both contracts to the board to consider for approval at tonight's meeting. And the public may access the staff reports and a video recording of the September 19th Watershed Committee meeting from the Marin Waters website.
Thank you, Monty. The next item is our Operations Committee meeting, which was held on September 20th.
Okay. The most interesting subject at that meeting was the implementation of AMI. I found the presentation to be extremely interesting and quite comprehensive, the best presentation I've seen on the subject by the district. I think the personnel attached to it are excellent, and I think there's a great opportunity here. The pilot program in Tiburon has been going on for a while now. There's something like 5,500 or 5,000 meters there. And it's been very effective, I think, in making people aware of their water usage and controlling that water usage. The idea of telling somebody that they need to conserve from data that's 2 months old is kind of humorous to me. It's like, definition of locking the barn after the horse got out. So I'm very excited about the AMI, and I think it's a really good program going forward. Expensive, but it's a good investment. There was a presentation on water supply and demand in a interesting discussion about that, about the past and the future and the present, and what's going to happen to our need in the future. Paul Sellier did an excellent job of summarizing where we are and where we've been. Like the other report, there is a recording of the meeting that's available on the website for the Operations Committee. And I encourage those who couldn't make the meeting to watch it, because the AMI part alone is enough to explain where we're going, or where we think we're going anyway.
Thank you, Larry. And then the last committee meeting was Finance and Admin, held on September 26th.
Terrific. So we had the Finance Administration Committee meeting on September 26th. This was a committee meeting, as there were only two of us there, not a full special board meeting. In fact, in the beginning of the meeting, we did discuss a review of whether we will continue to have special board meetings or committee meetings as a practice when we review our board calendar in the coming months. The staff provided a financial update and summary of the year-end financials led by Brett, our head of finance. In addition, Molly, our general counsel, discussed with the committee proposed changes to board policy number 50. And for those board members who were not there, I think it's important for you to either see that committee meeting video and review these in detail as they were provided in red lines. In regard to board policy number 50, which is our board ethics policy, sections 3 and 4 of the handbook were reviewed, and a number of proposed changes were covered. Now, the adoption of the board calendar will now happen by December 31st. Clarification of the existing teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act require a quorum of the board to be within the district's jurisdiction. Adding a brief explanation of the teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act, just cause or emergency circumstances, which now require both audio and visual participation, and identifying anyone 18 years old or over in the room. So just so everyone hears it clearly, like if you're zooming in, we're expecting you to be on video and audio when you do. Incorporating safeguarding confidential information and conflicts of interest provisions from board policy number 50. Adding a guidance on the Political Reform Act, section 84308 in the Levine Act, as to the amount of campaign donations from those with a proceeding in front of the board, which limits any contribution to $250 or less, or requires a director to abstain from participation in the matter. Incorporating restrictions on soliciting political contributions from board policy number 50, as well as guidance on incompatible offices and truthfulness of candidates' official statements. Guidance on how to handle perceived ethics violations and possible remedies. This was a deep and continuing review of our board policy handbook on sections 3 and 4. We'll continue to review sections 5 and 6 at our upcoming board meeting, Finance Committee meeting in November. The public may, and other board members may view and access their video recording and documents from the September 26th FAC meeting on the district's website. And at some point, we will review and approve changes when we've gone through all of them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jed. All right, we'll move on to then our consent calendar, which today includes 3 items. Approval of the minutes from our last board meeting on September 17th, and then the 2 items that Monty noted in his summary of our Watershed Committee meeting, which is approval of the Forestry Services General Services Agreement for continuation of the BIFIP and support of the Lagunitas Creek Watershed Enhancement Project. I just want to note the amount of this contract. It's for $2,902,344. And the last item is approval of the contract with O'Connor Environmental for continued work on Lagunitas Creek. And that's in the amount of $154,443. Terry, do you have any public comments on the consent calendar?
There are none.
Okay, if not, then do we have a motion to approve our consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Next is our regular agenda, beginning with item 9A, which is a capital program update. Director Anaya.
Yes, good evening, board members. Alex and I, Engineering Director. I'll be providing that update to the board. I got a PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay. So this afternoon, I'll be providing the capital improvement program update for the third quarter. So we'll start off by kind of briefly going over the fiscal year 24 review and going into the fiscal year 25 CIP expenditures. And then going over to discussing some select larger CIP projects that are currently underway in engineering, as well as kind of talking a little bit about some of the unplanned projects over this last fiscal year. And then some of the tasks that, given on some of the unplanned capital work that's happening that need to be reprioritized in order to allow for this work to happen, and then finish off this evening with a summary. So starting off with the fiscal year review. So this table has got a lot of stuff going on here, so I'll kind of walk us through it. So left category is all the different categories of different project or pipeline projects, pump stations of stuff that we do within the CIP project on a regular basis. Second column here is actually the adopted fiscal year 24 budget with each line item represented here for a total of about $32.9 million. Third column over is the actual fiscal year 24 expenditures. So these are the actual expenses through each one of those different categories. And I just want to make note that this is the actual expense. It doesn't capture the encumbrances for projects that are going over multiple years, which a lot of the work in the current CIP is happening over 2 or 3 or more years. So now in the fourth column over for the adopted fiscal year 25 budget is actually the budget for this fiscal year. And if we look at the next budget or next column over, the adjusted fiscal year 25 budget is the combination of the rollover or carry forward from fiscal year 24 plus the fiscal year 25. So that encumbers that total amount for fiscal year 25 plus a carry forward.
Does it include Fireflow?
Fireflow is also included in this. Yes, it's everything. Next column over is the actual expenses and encumbrances to date for this fiscal year. So that's everything that's been carried forward as far as what's going to be expended. So when we subtract the adjusted fiscal year 25 and the actual encumbrances for this column, you can see the second to the last column of the actual remaining budget left, followed by the percent remaining for each of the corresponding line items in the categories. Now, to point out, this is the first quarter of this new fiscal year. So it's expected to be around 25% expenditure to date. So you can see these percentages and numbers kind of reflect that we're kind of on par or even a little bit ahead of schedule with some of these expenditures for these different categories. So this slide right here is just a kind of a snapshot of all the larger capital projects this fiscal year. Is meant to be more of an informational to the board, just so you have an idea of what is currently in planning, designing, and construction and what's been completed to date. So now this next couple of slides, we'll be talking about and going over some of the larger, higher profile projects that staff are currently working on. And it only represents a small portion of the total CIP. So these two pipeline projects here are in construction, are examples of the larger, more visible pipeline projects within the district that we're currently working on. So starting with the Granada Pipeline Project, it's located in the town of Corte Madera. We'll be replacing approximately 2 miles of leak-prone cast iron pipe within that neighborhood. And to date, all mainline pipe work is looking to be completed in the next week or two, and the project will be looking to be completed on time. The second of the larger, more visible pipeline projects is the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard Pipeline Project, which is replacing approximately 4,500 feet of 100-year-old cast iron pipe on a very high traveled arterial road in the town of San Anselmo. So the project has had some complexities with sequencing of the project, traffic control plans, in coordination with the local schools to minimize impact. So this project started construction after summer school this past June. All the mainline pipe on that project has been done. So contractors currently focusing on service transfers. And also that project will be completed on time as well. Next is going over to our larger storage projects under construction, first being the Pine Mountain Tunnel Tanks project. Right now, we're currently under the second year of phase 1 construction, which we're looking to be completed here by the end of January 25. And staff is looking to advertise the second phase of this project by the end of this year. And also with the tank projects, we're looking at the Wolfpack Ridge Tank Recoating Project, which construction will be starting this month and will be completed by the end of February. Now, kind of looking at some of the pump stations and treatment plant projects, the Tokoloma Pump Station project is geared toward replacing the pumps, motors, and electrical system, as well as doing some fire hardening to the pump station. And the increased capacity from the 20 to the 28 MGD is so that the pump station can actually match the water production or the maximum water production at the San Geronimo treatment plant. That will allow the district to better utilize the district's water supply, as well as, account for any future water storage projects that staff are currently working on. So the project's currently in design. We're looking to actually advertise that project spring of next year, around May, and with the expected completion date of fiscal year 26. Another project is the San Geronimo.
We call the horsepower.
I believe there are 400.
These are the
horsepower
big ones,
The
huh?
big ones, yes. These are big pumps and motors. San Geronimo Treatment Plant project is spanning 2 fiscal years. Currently, it's in design. We're looking to start construction here early next spring after the winter. So in addition to some of the dam work that we're doing, spillway condition assessments and capacity assessments, staff is also currently now focusing on the Nicasio Dam Spillway Modifications Project. So since the last CIP update in June, staff have executed a contract with Black & Veatch to expedite the analysis and design of the modifications project. We've also brought on an expert team to help the district navigate the complex environmental process of this modifications project. And staff and the consultant team will be evaluating Kent, Alpine, and Sulahuili as part of this effort, but the main focus right now is really targeting Nicasio. This project is also an example of one that was not identified in the 2-year adopted budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. And it will require a pretty significant amount of staff time to really help shepherd and move this project forward as quickly as possible. So in addition to the spillway modifications project, the Fairfax Manor Pump Station is also another example of an unplanned capital project that occurred this last year due to some PG&E work, and where the grinder on their paving project rolled over and completely destroyed our pump station at Fairfax Manor. So this required staff to immediately take action by installing a separate remote pump station to ensure that we continue feeding the tank and the system and our customers with water. So staff recently executed a design service contract a couple of months ago to expedite the design and reconstruction of the pump station. Funding for this unplanned project will be initially funded from the capital reserves, and the district will be looking to pursue recovery of those costs. So we're anticipating to have the pump station back up and operational by the end of next year.
Going back in the same spot.
In the same spot, correct. So kind of like I alluded to a little bit ago about reprioritizing some of the tasks to account for this unplanned work. Project management for the Nicasio Spillway Modifications Project will definitely require substantial coordination between district staff, various district expert teams, regulatory agencies, and stakeholders to really ensure that this project continues to move forward through the environmental permitting, design, and construction in the most expedient fashion. So this will require some of the 5-year strategic plan objectives to be reprioritized, which will be discussed in more detail later on at the upcoming October 15th board meeting. Some of those objectives include pushing out the large infrastructure condition assessment, facilities master plan assessment, and also the discussion on carbon neutrality policies to allow staff to really focus on the Nicasio Spillway Modifications Project. And then in the future, really give staff the opportunity and time to focus on these objectives to really put in the good effort to address these. So just kind of in summary, based on where we are to date, the fiscal year 25 CIP is generally on track and moving forward in the right direction. And staff will continue to keep the board informed of any tasks that need to be reprioritized. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Board questions, comments? Do you want to, Monty, you want to kick us off?
Other than just thank you for bringing this to us and keeping us abreast of things that need to shift because we have unplanned things. I mean, this is the nature of life, and but we could just things could just slip and we not notice it. Instead, I like the transparency of bringing it forward and telling us the things that you're looking to delay in order to address these higher priority needs, which all makes sense. So thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Jed?
Yeah, I don't know what you mean reprioritize. So I mean, these are major things heavily discussed over a long period of time. So does that mean they're shelved? Like as an example, the facilities master plan, where are we? Should we talk about it? Does that mean we're not going to talk about it anymore? What does this mean?
I think more than reprioritizing, it's really just kind of postponing for, some time frame yet to be determined once we really identify what the need is to focus on the Nicasio spillway. But it's not going to be forgotten or shelved or not done. It's just trying to find where that time frame is.
What's the large infrastructure and dam condition assessment that's being less prioritized now?
That's actually looking at the dams and doing a condition assessment of the actual dam itself, and then also looking at our water treatment facilities like San Geronimo, Bon Tempe, and Ignacio. So that's really the focus on the larger infrastructure. That's what that is.
Got it.
A lot of that work is still ongoing and part of the water system master plan that's currently underway. So there are things in motion to address some of those, but we won't be able to kind of switch gears into the bigger infrastructure just right now.
Yeah.
I think, Director Smith, there's different ways we can go about this sort of thing. We have a strategic plan, an annual plan, and an adoption of a CIP that kind of sets the path forward, anticipating a workload for the engineering group in this instance. And as things shift, and they do, and these are two examples that, as you know, or have heard, require significant resources, and they were both unplanned. Of course, the Nicasio spillway spun out of the evaluation, and the board wanted to move it forward in a high priority fashion. So this is, I think it's fair to call it kind of a suggested deferment of certain initiatives that have been identified by the board and staff and brought into the annual plan. I will be next week providing a quarterly update on the annual plan, and we'll have a bit more discussion. But I think looking at these as kind of proposals, the alternative would be, and we could do it if there was interest or a need, bringing the entire CIP and the annual work plan and kind of live, kind of workshopping it, reprioritizing. I think in this case, the elements we identified for deferment are really part of the effort to put together kind of a comprehensive needs assessment for our system, really in conjunction with the next rate increase or next rate discussion. So we're really 2 years out. So I think it's reasonable to look at these and say, we really probably do have some time on these to meet that schedule and address these higher priority unplanned issues in lieu of those at this point.
Okay, that makes sense. It would be good to have a little bit more of an understanding of how you came up with these three. What other goals did you decide not to put on here? I don't remember what they are, so it's really hard to look at these three in isolation without a conversation with the board. And we had so many deep conversations with the community and the public, and
Right.
and so how did these three get picked out? I don't know that if you're looking for an approval tonight, I don't know.
Well, I think with those comments, we'll plan on.
I mean, they kind of make sense, but I don't know what else. Maybe we
Understood.
think
So
something else
I
makes sense.
think
Okay,
at
thanks.
next week's annual plan update, we can revisit this.
Thanks. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jed. Larry?
Oh, well, thank you. It was interesting. it's good to see we're making progress. And I'm fairly comfortable with the decision to reprioritize the items. I think Jed's right. There could be more discussion about it, but you guys live and breathe it, and we sort of float above it. So, you know, yeah, it's interesting question. You can go back to how it got to be on the list to begin with. That's a whole issue too, of what gets picked from the original decision. So, moving things around doesn't bother me too much. None of those three triggered any great angst in me from my recollection of the discussion. So, like I say, I'm pretty comfortable with you guys steering the boat here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Alex, just one quick item. You showed the expenditures for fiscal year 24 and 25. They're on slide 4. And I'm just trying to get a sense of where we are with respect to budget. And my impression when I first saw the slide is we're potentially behind budget, but it sounds like you're saying that we're actually, you noted that at this stage we would be maybe at 25% of total available budget, and we're quite a bit higher on many items. And I didn't follow that. Where did the 25% come from? There's only 2 fiscal years noted here.
Right, but the fiscal year started in July and it goes over 4 quarters. So we're basically in the first quarter of the fiscal year. So that would be about 25% of the 100% of the budget. So that's where the 75 or 25% of the budget expenditure came from.
So it indicated we're at 60-some% remaining dollars.
Right.
And you would sort of expect we'd be at 75%. So even with the carryover from last year, we're have a good start on tackling both this year's CIP and the carryover from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Good. That's reassuring then. Okay. When I first saw that, I misunderstood and thought that we were potentially falling behind on our ability to develop the big projects. Okay, then thank you, Alex. And with that, we'll open it up for public.
Program.
Yeah, for Pine Mountain Tunnel. Yes, we only got a 6-month window for that project. That's why it's
That kind of confuses not your time, but the assessment.
Yeah.
25% or not 25% because stop.
But the take home is we're on good pace, it seems.
yes.
Great. Yeah, then we'll move to public comment. Terry.
There are none.
Okay. And then Alex, I think you're on for the next item as well.
Yeah.
With item 9B, this is a request to add 4 additional positions to the engineering division.
Yes. So let me get this PowerPoint up as well. Okay, so I'll also be presenting this item to the request for 4 additional positions. So starting off by reviewing the projected CIP budget and the projects that are currently going in engineering. And then we'll get into a discussion on staffing needs along with the position or how we're going to fund these positions, and then follow it and end up the evening with the recommendations. So starting off with the CIP budget. So prior to fiscal year 24, the last 12 years, annual CIP investments have ranged anywhere between $16 to $26 million, with an average being about 21. So the projected ongoing capital budget is estimated to be approximately $53.5 million per year, which is more than doubling the district's current CIP budget. The increased capital budget will be crucial in meeting the district's obligations to address the deferred infrastructure improvements, and increase in the rate of infrastructure rehabilitation and replacement, to build a more resilient and reliable water system throughout the service area, as well as also providing funding for wildfire mitigation work on fire and fuels management programs, and also replacing our outdated enterprise resource planning software, or SAP, which will allow the district to better manage our day-to-day business. And also, this will also provide staff to focus on, water resiliency projects like the Nicasio spillway modification, as well as to ensure that the district has good options for drought resiliency into the future. So this slide right here is kind of a snapshot table of the current fiscal year 24-25 projects. So the basic workflow for projects in engineering, they start off in planning design report. Projects are identified, prioritized, and ranked. All the details is what the scope is of the project. Then that project goes into the design engineering team that is responsible for putting together the plan specifications and engineering estimate. And then once that's completed, the project is advertised and awarded, at which point it goes into construction to execute and actually put and implement the project and put it in the ground. So over the past 2 fiscal years, planning, design, and construction within the engineering department have been pretty busy. You can see the workloads for the various respective groups. And just kind of looking at the fiscal year 25, just to show that the engineering will be very busy this fiscal year with projects in all 3 of those different departments. Oh, yeah. They're just replacement, CEQA exempt. They're straightforward. Yeah. So now kind of moving into the staffing resources. So in order to manage the increased capital budget, staff completed a detailed staffing analysis to determine what the future staffing needs would be. So we started off by reviewing all the past projects to extract staff charge times by the different type of project to establish what a workload capacity would be. Then we also reached out to a couple of Bay Area agencies that have a similar CIP budget as to what we're expected to kind of gauge what their staffing is and how they utilize consultants. Then we compiled all the capital projects that were identified in the past 2-year budget and between fiscal year 24 and 28, and projected what that staffing workload capacity by the different project type, the size, complexity, and duration of the project. And then we use that to project what the staffing workload would be for each respective department and engineering to determine what the workforce need would be to execute that CIP. So the analysis identified a couple of staffing needs actually within the planning, construction, and design groups. And we started by focusing on a hybrid approach. So we started by looking at the existing vacant positions in engineering and converting those positions to help kind of plug in some of those gaps in those respective work groups. And then also leveraging consultant teams to augment staffing resources. And then why we're here today is actually the request for additional positions because there's still a shortfall. So just to kind of go over what the conversions were. So the engineering division has a total of 39 positions available, 4 of which were currently vacant. And staff have identified the opportunity to convert existing positions to help fill some of these near-term staffing needs. So staff brought an item to the board April 30th to the board to reclassify the vacant land surveyor position to a supervising land surveyor position. And this position will be integrated into the drafting team in order to create a more streamlined structure in the work group, as well as to provide a career growth opportunity for drafting team members in the surveyor position, which will ensure the continuity of future professional survey work for the district. So staff recently completed the interviews for that position and have tentatively offered a position to one of the applicants, and that position would fall within the design department. So along with the analysis, staff also identified the growing need for an environmental expert who's familiar with the state and federal environmental compliance needs for the projects, grant applications, including managing and tracking environmental documentation and responding to regulators to ensure timely completion of all our environmental documentation for our projects. So there's also a need within the watershed department for similar services to do the CEQA documentation for all their culvert replacement projects as well as other district needs. So given the technical nature of this position and what it entails, staff identified an opportunity to convert the existing vacant senior engineer position to an environmental planning position that will be utilized to complete all these tasks. So staff's currently looking to advertise that position this month, and that position will fall within the planning department once it gets filled. We did. Yeah, we did. For a while, yes. But we haven't for a while, but now there is a need for that again, based on the workload that we currently have. So we also identified the growing need for additional construction inspectors for district capital projects as we get into these really complicated multi-year projects. So we did identify an opportunity to convert the vacant senior CAT specialist and real property agent to 2 new construction inspector positions into the construction department. So even with that, with those conversion of those positions, we're still looking at leveraging the consultant support for both planning and design for the more complex design of the projects, as well as for services into construction. So now kind of once all those conversions have been done and get filled, there's still a need for additional staffing in the design and construction groups. So as the CIP program is estimated to more than double over the next few years, the backlog of projects in all categories of the district infrastructure are addressed. It will be necessary to obtain 2 additional engineers within the design department to help drive that CIP forward whilst we continue to leverage consultant teams to bridge that gap. And likewise is the case with the construction department, since all the projects that go through design end up in construction. So the district will also need to hire an additional construction inspector and 1 additional engineering technician to manage the additional construction projects and administrative tasks associated with that work. And as well as continuing the consultants' support for all of the departments. So kind of rolling, how do we fund these 4 positions? So the fully burdened cost of these 4 additional positions is approximately $775,000. And funding for these positions is incorporated into the capital budget. So the fiscal year 23 to 25 adopted budget included a 5-year capital improvement program that increased from 24 to $56 million in fiscal year 28. So the increased budget is primarily dedicated towards enhancing water supply project reliability and addressing deferred maintenance on the district water distribution system. So each project budget includes a component for district staffing, and the increased capital budget has sufficient funding for the recommended positions within engineering. So the 4 new positions being requested will be working on capital projects tied directly to the capital program budget, and it's appropriate to fund these 4 new positions by the capital program budget. So staff recommends that the board of directors authorize the 4 new full-time positions within the engineering division and authorize the general manager to recruit and hire 2 new associate engineers, 1 construction inspector 2, and 1 new engineering technician, all within the engineering department in support of the capital program. And as we continue moving forward, staff will continue to regularly evaluate staffing resources and that will be needed to execute the capital program in a strategic, conservative, thoughtful approach.
Alex, if I could just briefly jump in to share with the board this process of first looking at every vacant position. Are our needs still the same? Is that the right classification? Is it in the right place in the district? To constantly improve efficiency and effectiveness is what we do with all vacant positions. But in this case, that was the first step. Then, as Alex noted, leveraging existing staff with consultant support. And then lastly, additional staff. And it's lastly because, permanent staff in the district is significant long-term decision and cost. In this case, we're increasing the CIP, as Alex noted, 100%, if not a bit more, and about a 10% increase in engineering staff. So the last bullet on Alex's slide said, continue to evaluate. We don't want to bring a message here that we're good, because we're still going to be thin, but we're going to give it a good shot, and maybe 6 months or a year, perhaps we're back again. But we think this is a good size to give a shot to tackle this expanded CIP at this point.
All right, Alex, thanks again. Jed, do you want to kick us off?
I don't have the exact numbers in here, but per what you just said, Ben, this board and over the last few years, we have approved an historic investment in the infrastructure and efficiency of our water system and for our customers. That far outweighs the increase in staff that you're asking for here. So those 4 incremental new folks, which is, less than 2% increase of our total staffing, is spot on. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Larry?
Do you anticipate any problems in hiring the folks?
Just based on experience currently, we have taken a little
market
bit
seems pretty
longer.
tight to me.
Yes, so that kind of provides a little bit of an issue as far as timing and trying to get people in as soon as possible. So this will help us kind of anticipate and try to give us a little bit of a buffer to backfill positions now.
Is that surveying person LS?
Yes, correct. Licensed surveyor in the state of California.
Cool.
Thanks, Larry. Monty?
Alex, do you expect a lot of staff internally to move up and apply for these positions?
For the engineering position, it's more technical, so I wouldn't expect a lot of folks internally to apply for those. But for the construction inspection positions, absolutely, that's a position that's kind of coveted amongst district employees, and that's something that provides some of that mobility within the organization.
Great. I mean, I think it's really important that we're providing opportunities for people to move up. To Jed's point, we have made a really significant investment toward new water supply reliability, but also to address maintenance issues that we've really committed time and focus to bend the curve, is the way I'd put it, toward where we're getting ahead of the problem instead of growing. So if this is what it takes to make that happen, that's great. I'm glad. I'm not surprised to hear, Ben, that you mentioned that given the ratio of the amount of increase in our spending relative to the number of staff that are being added, there is a disconnect. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you did come back, at a later point. It's important for us to stay on track. This is really basic foundational, be able to deliver water safe and reliably. So appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that, it's notable when we see a doubling of our CIP budget. And also the desire now to maintain spending at that level to ensure the integrity of our distribution system and all of our infrastructure. Alex, I'm slow with numbers today, but so I have to repeat everything. So there are 4 conversions and then 4 additional positions, the 2 design engineers, construction inspector, and the engineering technician. So
Right.
Is that a net gain of 8 people in your
No.
department?
The 4 conversions were existing FTE
Right.
positions that were just reclassified from one position to another, but that didn't add any additional
Okay,
staff. These 4 are new FTEs,
right. So
so it's a net 4.
It's a net 4.
Yeah.
And is there at some point, with a lot of growth, will you need additional management support to
That's something that I will be looking at constantly as far as, supervising management and even, staff to make sure we could execute all this work. So that's something that I'm always kind of thinking about.
Well, great. Look forward to hearing more on that then. No other board comments, questions? Okay, then Terry, if we could open it up for public comment, please.
There are none.
Okay, then this is an action item. I'll just repeat, the board is asked to authorize 4 new full-time positions within the engineering division to be funded through the capital improvement program budget, and to authorize our general manager to recruit and hire 2 associate engineers, 1 construction inspector 2, and 1 engineering technician, all within the engineering division. Do we have a motion for these 2 authorizations?
So moved.
Second.
Could we have roll call vote, please, Terry?
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and and President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, I think you're free. And we'll move on to item 9C, which is Discussion of ordinance number 467, amending and adding watershed use regulations and proposed additions and increases of certain watershed fines. Welcome, Sean. Don?
Good evening, board members. I'm Director of Watershed Resources, Sean Horn. I'm joined with Don Wick, our Chief Watershed Ranger tonight. This item is a continuation of the discussion we've been having around watershed regulations, fines, and some new regulations that we're proposing to support the watershed's recreation management planning feasibility study and some of the strategic opportunities that came out of that. So you'll recall that on June 27th, the watershed or the Finance Committee meeting, we initially reviewed the watershed fines and proposed some updates based on what our rangers had been seeing in the field and some updates that would support the feasibility study that we were advancing. We brought that back to the board for further discussion, and we got additional input on creating a more tiered structure for all of the visitor-based fines, as well as increasing the base fine for that. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Don, and he's going to walk us through some of the updates that we're proposing in this this item tonight.
Good evening. So we've been working with Molly and Jared, and Sean's been doing a tremendous amount of work on this also. So we heard what you guys wanted when we brought this stuff to you the last meeting and the meetings before that. We've added a couple sections specifically for the dams and spillways, trespassing on those, and then the damage, creating damage to either of those. We've created a new ordinance for that. We added drones into the existing ordinance of games and other activities. So they can't fly drones over, on or over the district property without a district permit. We also created a section for e-bikes specifically, where Class 1 is the only ones that we're going to currently allow under the pilot program. Those bikes must be labeled per California Vehicle Code 312.5. stating that they're a Class 1, and it gives the power of the motor and the top speed, I believe, is they're supposed to be labeled, I think. But it has to stay clearly that it's a Class 1 bike. And then we also took the base fines, all the ones that were at $35, we raised everything up to $50. We did tier some, like we had talked about, for some bicycle offenses that we're seeing, and for dogs off leash, prohibited riding on trails, and for speed limits. And then also a specific section where they can't use any vessel in the lakes or on the water in the spillways, which we have seen people riding down the spillways, and we're trying to prevent that. So with that.
And I'll just note, we did hear also that we wanted to see our fines for resource protections increase. So we did that uniformly, whether it be cultural, geological, biological. And then the tiered structure applies to most of the visitor-based, regulations that we have. So with that, this evening, we're asking the board to review and adopt the ordinance and the associated resolution, which would increase the fines, which would go into effect in the first of the year.
Thank you, Sean. Don, thanks a lot. And we'll open it up for board questions and discussions. Monty, do you want to start us off?
I have nothing further to add, just other than I appreciate coming back. We've this is your third trip here to kind of see if we can get it right, and nothing perfect is the enemy of the good, but I think this is sent a strong signal, and the changes are moving us in the right direction. So I'm supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Jed?
Yeah, thank you for listening, doing the work, responding. I'm supportive of your proposal and good hard work.
Larry?
I'm cool. Thanks.
I'll confirm the same. And, I think I just want to make it clear when our customers look at this, when the public looks at this, they'll see a lot of now alignment or equity. Equity is the right word in this case regarding penalties, but it really does address, I think, the changes do address the concerns that we discussed in the last meetings. So thanks for that. Okay, then, Terry, do we have any public comments on this item?
There are none.
We'll move then to the approvals, and I'll just repeat, the board is asked to adopt ordinance number 467, amending and adding watershed use regulations to Title IX of the Marin Municipal Water District Code, and to approve a resolution updating the watershed fine schedule, adding fines for violations of the new regulations set forth in ordinance number 467, and increasing fines for certain violations. Do we have a motion for both the adoption and the approval of the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Terry.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks
you.
again. And Terry, our last agenda item is review of future board and committee meetings.
Yes, December. Wishful thinking, I guess. October 15th is our next Board of Directors meeting. And that's, as our general manager said, we'll be having a discussion on the quarterly strategic work plan progress update. Then also same week, there are 2 committee meetings, the watershed and the operations committees. Then the following week is our finance and administration committee meeting. And I believe this Friday, October 4th, is the North Bay Watershed Association board meeting.
Thank you, Terry. And with that, the Marin Water Board of Directors meeting of October 1st, 2024 is hereby adjourned.